Wanted to start this morning off with an FAQ. It's a frequently asked question, and I think it's a fact, that the preferences for MicroStation and OpenRoads Designer, basically the Bentley CAD products, are not infallible. Sometimes MicroStation and OpenRoads do not function the way you think they should, and it makes you stop for a second and you go, am I doing something wrong? Is my data corrupted? Maybe, and we rarely, hopefully, assume that the software is doing something wrong, but the preferences can get kind of messed up. And when that happens, you might have symptoms like a dialog box might not appear when you poke a button. You click on a button and nothing happens. It's like, what? Or I saw this several times in the last month, the ORD manipulators. So if you use OpenRoads Designer and you select a geometry, for example, you expect to see manipulators. Those are little pieces of text that say what the station is at the beginning. They just weren't even showing. What we've discovered is that these problems typically are not related to your data. Your data is probably just fine. More likely it's related to your Windows profile on your computer because it's related to the preferences. So I put together these steps that you could take if you think that MicroStation or ORD is not functioning the way you think it should function. Now, step one is keep track of how you customize your preferences. It's actually step 0. I put it in there because you should be doing this all along. This will be helpful to you because I clear my preferences multiple times a week. People who are heavy users of the modeling software inside OpenRoads Designer, I've found often clear their preferences as well, frequently. So keep track. If you are a person who uses 2 application windows, keep track of that fact, which toolboxes did you have open, that type of thing. Because if you clear your preferences, you're going to go back to the ODOT defaults. So if MicroStation or OpenRoads is not working the way you think it should, exit the software. Then just try reopening the same file with the same software and see if that cleared up. Sometimes the preferences kind of get messed up in volatile memory, and all you have to do is exit the software and restart, and things work great if that works for you. Also, consider restarting your computer at midday if you're a heavy user of the modeling software. Make sure that you're restarting your computer every morning anyway. Now, if it didn't help to fully exit the software and restart it, then let's clear the preferences. Make sure the software is exited, run from your desktop engineering folder. There's a subfolder called V10, run the clear_prefs command. That will remove that preferences from the Windows profile, your Windows profile on your computer. Then when you relaunch the software, it will grab the new ODOT preferences. Yeah, you'll be back to our defaults, but then check the functionality. It should be working again. If it's not working, then we would suspect something else. So if it's still not helpful for what's happening, please contact East Engineering Application Support Team. We'll give you a hand with that and try to determine if it's data related or who knows. All right, that was what I wanted to tell you first. Let's get into my topic for today, unless there are any questions about preferences. I have questions every day about preferences, but now my topic for today is how to create my own MicroStation base file from ORD-generated civil data. And there are a couple of products that I think would have great general usage if they weren't civil data. So if people who use MicroStation could just copy some things that they need to copy. But what happens lots of times is you will hover over one of those elements that you see attached as a reference, and you get that pop-up message, circle with a slash, and it says locked civil element. And it keeps you from copying that into your own file and using it. So what I'm going to show you today is how to actually get that line work into like your own working file or your own base file. Another issue that we've been seeing is if you have been trying to export civil graphics to Google Earth, sometimes not all of the graphics wind up being displayed in Google Earth, and that's kind of a bummer. But the fix for these activities, all of these activities, is to not start with civil data. Let's create a base file that contains non-civil graphics, and I will even show you today how you can create a MicroStation terrain element from a survey terrain just using MicroStation. Okay, I'm going to show you how. We're going to start in ProjectWise. So I'm going to open up my ProjectWise Explorer. I'm going to use my user training area, which got moved, and I'm actually going to use the surveys user training area today, and it's in pwo.prod. Just going to expand that, and it should go back to where I was earlier, which is down inside key number 5/8, which is not a real project. I'm in the number 2 plan sheets folder. So to begin with, I'm going to create a non-civil graphics 2D base file. There's not going to be any terrain. This is just for like the line work that I want to see. The graphics are going to look like they came from a survey base map, because they will. And these graphics will be able to be edited in MicroStation. So we're going to open this OPNP file. Well, maybe before I open it, I will just point out in ProjectWise Explorer, I'm going to select the OPNP file. This is constructed, it's a design deliverable from Roadway. They should provide this OPNP file, and what it has attached to it, if I show the dependency viewer, we will see that what it has attached to it is there's a CAD base file, there's a geometry container file, a corridor container file, and a terrain eBase container file. Each one of those container files has the published data. All of these files and have the PUB moniker. Those are attached as references. So when we open this OPNP file, we should be able to see all of this published data coming from the roadway geometry, the roadway corridor, that's going to be the design, and the survey terrain. So let's open this file. I'm going to use open with, and I'm going to open it read only, because the hat that I am wearing today is a person that doesn't own this file. I should not be editing it. So I'm going to not check it out. I'm going to open it read only by checking open document as read only. Now there are other ways to open read only, but this is the way I'm doing it because I've got 50 million pieces of software installed. So I'm choosing MicroStation Connect, open read only. This document, the status in ProjectWise will remain checked in, because what's happening is ProjectWise is copying out that document and then opening the copy on my local computer. But I get to see everything that's attached as a reference, and when it finally gets in there, I'm going to show you. These are not the default MicroStation preferences. I have modified things just a little bit to make it easier for me. I've got my property dialog open on the right, and we're going to use that to investigate what we end up creating. All right, I finally got the file open. You'll notice at the top corner, it says it's a 2D file. It's open, read only. I'm going to open up the references dialog to just show you what I showed you in the ProjectWise Explorer, and I did not mean to dock that. So sitting in front, I've got the hierarchy on the left, which I can expand, and I can see inside the hierarchy. I'm going to expand all of that, and what I see at the bottom of the hierarchy are all these published files. The one thing, no, actually, what I see up here at the top is that the CAD base file is not displayed. If it's gray, it's not displayed. That's simple thing. Now, the CAD base file is actually selected on the right-hand side, and we can see that it's just not displayed. I don't need that data to be displayed for what I'm doing right here. But I want all of the other data. But there's some stuff that I don't need to put in my own base file. I'm going to close this, and I'm going to open up the level display dialog and show you how I will adjust this. I do not need to see these named boundary graphics. Those named boundary graphics are in the active model, the active default model on the S named boundary level. Toggle them off. I don't need to see them. These cyan blue graphics are in the published corridor file. They're actually coming through the container file reference, and they're on level 1. So I'm going to select the container file reference and toggle off level 1. I also don't need to see the corridor graphics, the template range. I don't need to see all these corridor graphics. Those are on separate levels. I'm going to toggle them off. D core boundary, D core template range. Do not need to see those. I'm also going to choose, let's see, the geometry. And when I zoom in here to the geometry, what I will see is that I have got every station is displayed. I don't need the 100-foot stations displayed for my product. I'm going to toggle off the main tick small scale. I'm going to toggle off that so that I don't see those, because when I create my base file, I'm only going to get what I see. Now, this is my base file that's going to have 2D graphics. A lot of information is coming in from the terrain. You can actually see that better when we open the references dialog. Let me open the reference dialog. If I select the terrain in the reference dialog with the highlight mode set to highlight, all of the graphics that are coming from the terrain highlight cyan blue. So I can see I've got that. I cannot remember what AT is, but it's on a communications utility line. So great. Overhead line. There's a fence. I got my ditch, edge of gravel, edge of pavement, trees. That's really sufficient. That's the kind of stuff that I want to see in my base file, and that's all coming from the terrain. I do have some levels toggled off in the terrain, and those levels are things that I don't need to see. Break lines, I don't need to see the break lines. I don't need to see the random points. And also toggled off are the exterior line and the perimeter. For the 2D stuff, I do not need to see those. So I'm ready. I am ready to create my base map. I'm going to use a command under the selection group on the Drawing Home ribbon tab. Selection group, it's in the fence tools, and it is called Save Fence to File. I'm going to choose this. So it says copy fence contents to new file. In the lower left corner, it's walking me through the wizard, which is this command, but I want to explain a few things that happen and make some recommendations for doing this type of work inside of ProjectWise. This command is going to create a new file. So it needs to put it someplace, and it's going to want to put it in ProjectWise. I'm recommending that you click this ... to define the output file. Don't use a wizard. The advanced wizard gets you into that naming tool. Never use the naming tool when you're inside a CAD application. It doesn't work well. So we're going to use no wizard and say OK. This allows us to choose where we put this file. If you're creating new things, importing things, I always put them in 0 temp because I can delete my mistakes. So I'm going to use the select button and choose 0 temp. I can see where I'm at, verifying that I'm in the right key number, 0 temp, OK. Now, it makes a lot of sense to me to put a name in here for the document that I can easily find. In this 0 temp folder, there's hardly anything else in there, but In real life, you guys have probably got a ton of stuff in your zero temp folder. I'm going to highlight just the first part of the name and type my base file. My base file. Notice my name lock is on, so the file name is going to be the same as the document name, and it really doesn't matter about the description, but I'm going to say this is my base file in progress, whatever. All of this information will go into the ProjectWise folder that I choose, and it will be applied as an attribute to that document. When I click OK or save, it actually creates the file. Nothing's in there. If I bring ProjectWise Explorer to the front and go to zero temp, I'll see that my base file was created and it's checked out, but there's nothing in it yet. Now, I'm going to check the box to switch to generated file, and I'm going to follow the directions in the lower left corner. Lower left corner says enter my first fence point, so I'm going to draw a fence. First click, left click to draw my block around the area that I'm interested in, and I need to accept the fence contents with another left click. When I accept that, it's putting all that information into the file, and it says, just FYI, my base file is opened read-only. Why is it doing that? Because the file that I'm in right now is open read-only. That's okay. I'm going to dismiss that with the close button while it continues to open my new file. I'm getting an alert that MicroStation must be restarted to load the new configuration. Do you want to restart now? We should almost always say yes. It's good practice to say yes. This is ProjectWise saying, hey, I noticed that there's this number 9 workset folder, and if you want access to all the ODOT goodies, you better say yes, is what it's saying. So we'll say yes to restart. It's restarting MicroStation, and it'll still be read-only. It's not going to check that file out. You'll notice it's not checked out. It's copied out. That's okay. I just want to get in there and look. We'll notice when it opens up that this file is 2D. And as I said before, it's read-only because I started read-only in that OPNP file. But we can look and see what's there, even though it's read-only. So we started in a 2D file. It created a 2D file. I'm going to select everything in this file using the element selection tool and that select all button. I'm going to look at the properties dialog and notice that I have all these lovely simple MicroStation elements. Cells, I know about cells, complex strings, lines. I can do what I need to do with this file. I can copy these elements. I'm going to choose the copy command, and I'm going to zoom in until I see a fence line, and I'm going to select it. I'm going to choose the copy command. Evidently, I didn't. Oh, file is read-only. Lenny, read your prompts. Hopefully you all are seeing this. Tool is not allowed. I chose the copy command. Crazy person. Anyway, let's do something that I believe we can do, even in a read-only file. Let's, nope, I need a file that I can apply a geographic coordinate system to. I want to export this information to a KML file. I'm going to exit MicroStation. It's not going to check the file in because the file is not checked out, but I'm going to find that file and I'm going to open it with MicroStation, but not read-only. Let's do this the right way. Oh. And it's not named very well either. So one of the things that we can do is we can also run the naming tool on it, decide what we want to call this thing, and then we can move it to the right location. I'm going to quickly, though, show you this KML file or KMZ. All right, now I have the file open in an editable fashion. I should be able to choose that copy command if it's actually open, copy, and I can select that fence line and I can paste it wherever I want. Woohoo! I can shorten that line. I can manipulate these graphics. These are mine. They are not civil graphics. So when I name my file, I'm going to make sure that, it says that it's my stuff, nobody else's. I'm going to go ahead and undo that. If I go to the Utilities menu or tab, there's a coordinate system button under the geographic group, and I'm going to apply a coordinate system. It's not necessary for exporting to a Google Earth file, a KMZ, but it won't be in the correct location if there's no coordinate system applied. So I happen to know that this data was created with OCRS PDX, which I'm applying. And now I'm going to create by exporting. I'm going to choose export. I'm going to create that KML file. It's under visualization file types, Google Earth. I'm not going to use a wizard. In fact, I'm actually going to cancel out of this select a wizard because I'm going to create this on my desktop. I'm just going to save it to my desktop. Choose my desktop. It's going to create my base file, KMZ, not named very well. I'll save it. It's also going to launch Google Earth and load that KMZ file. And it's going to show me where it's at, and I can double check. Could I use this for my public information? And I certainly can. I can see that all the graphics are there. It's hard to see with the image, but I do have my design graphics. I have my existing roadway, which seems to follow, the roadway that I'm seeing in the image. So great, looks awesome. I'm going to close this and discard my attachment in Google Earth. And I'm done with this base file. Almost. I'm going to exit this base file, check it in, and I'm going to decide what to name it and where to put it. Well, it's a base file. It has non-civil graphics. It really goes in the number 3 base files. So let me run the naming tool. It's on the properties. If I go to the attributes tab, let's put on a traffic hat today for grins. Let's just say that I'm going to be doing some pavement markings and I need a base file, a design base file, and I want to start from those graphics that I just dumped in there. So I'm going to use a pavement marking. I always have trouble. There's so many to choose from. I'm going to look here, pavement marking. Design base. Select the document name. All I need to do is type a .dgn because this is a .dgn and click save. It is telling me that the correct project-wise folder is number 3 base files. I'll go ahead and save. And then I'm going to close that. Now I've got it. I could actually use the rename, which is what I like to use to put this name information into the description. This engineering tips. I'm going to click OK. Now I'm in the 0 temp folder. I need to get that into the number 3 base files. I can delete from the 0 temp, and I can also use the command move to, which is what I'm going to use. Move to. I'm going to select a different destination, and that destination folder is going to be the number 3 base files. Click OK. Click OK, and it will actually remove it from 0 temp because we can all delete from 0 temp. And if I look at number 3 base files, there it is, ta-da, ready to be attached as a reference, ready for me to work in. I could have also put it, down in the pavement marking folder as a working as well. So your choice. Let's take a look at creating, unless there are questions, let's take a look at creating a MicroStation terrain. The reason you might want a MicroStation terrain is maybe you want the ability to display contours. And you might want to display contours differently than anybody else in the world. You might want to change your interval, for example. So let's create that kind of a base file. To do that, I'm going to put on my geotechnical hat, because I do know sometimes they like to see contours. And I'm going to go to the geotechnical folder. In the geotechnical folder, I'm going to create a 3D file, a 3D DGN file. So I'm going to use the new advanced wizard command, and I'm going to select a template. Now, I didn't have to do this before because I just opened the OPNP file read-only. I need a 3D file to start with. So where do I get those seed files? They are at the top of the tree in a folder called CAD Resources, in a seed file, and they're in a folder based upon the name of the software I'm going to use. Well, I'm going to use MicroStation, so I'm going to choose the MicroStation Seed 3D. Hit Next. I need to name this. I'm going to choose Geotechnical, and I'm going to choose the Geotechnical Data Design Working. I think that's what I decided I was going to do. Click in the document name. The only thing I need to do is click again in the document name and give it that .dgn, because the naming tool can't do that, and hit the Next button. Now I'm going to open this document, this file, with MicroStation Connect as if to edit, because I want to edit it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a display of all of the data that I want to get into that base file that contains a terrain. The easiest way, I think, to do that is to attach the OPNP file as a reference. It's already got all of that stuff referenced in. So that's what I'm going to do. So from my home ribbon, I'm going to open up the reference dialog, and I'm going to choose Attach Reference. I'm going to navigate up one level and go into the Plan Sheets folder where that OPNP file sits. Make sure my attachment method says interactive so that I can tell it I want to change the nested attachments from no nesting to live nesting. A depth of 1 will allow me to see the reference attachments to the OPNP, so it'll allow me to see the container files. But the container files don't have any data in them. I need to see what's attached to the container files, so I need to increase my nesting depth to 2, and I say OK. Wait for a second, fit my view, and it looks just like the data that was displayed in the OPNP file, because it is. Now, I need to adjust what I'm seeing. I can do that through the level display dialog. Open up my level display dialog. I can see that that CAD base file is still toggled off, which is fine. And I can choose my, let's start at the bottom, geometry. I don't need to see the stations for every 100 foot, so I'm going to turn off the small scale. For the corridor, if I want to see any part of the corridor, it's not going to be this stuff on level 1. It's not going to be the corridor boundary or the template range. And I'll still see the proposed edge of asphalt, the lane lines. That sounds perfect. In the OPNP file itself, I don't need to see the named boundaries, so I toggle those off. We are close. I want to make a point here with the terrain. So I've selected the container file. And I see that I've got some levels that are turned off. If you wish to take a civil terrain and port it over into a MicroStation terrain, you have to display the terrain graphically. If I happen to choose select all right now, nothing is selected, but if I select everything that I can see over here on the right in my properties dialog that there's nothing that looks like a terrain. There's nothing that looks DTM-ish. So I must not be displaying anything that's a terrain. The terrain is governed by its boundary, and it's called a perimeter. So what you'll want to do is make sure that this boundary perimeter, ETER boundary perimeter, is toggled on. When I hover over this line, it's cyan blue, it tells me with a pop-up, I am a terrain. That's right, that's the terrain. If we select it, it says it's a DTM entity. Fine, element description is it's a terrain. So once that's displayed, now we're ready to use our tools, our fence tools, save this fence to a file. Now, I want to create this file in the same geotechnical folder. It's just it's going to be a working file. And then I can create a base file from a working file later, but this is just going to be a working file. It's going to name it with the name of the file that's open, and then it's going to append the name of the model. I could change all that stuff if I'd like to. It's not necessary. I'm going to run the naming tool later anyway. So my preference is to just check the box to switch to the generated file, draw my fence as I'm prompted to in the lower left corner, and accept it. Now I'm going to be prompted to check in my GT work 01 because it's open. So I'm going to check that one in, and it's actually going to create that other file and check it out. I'm going to bring ProjectWise to the front just so that we can see it created the file that it said it would, and it's checked out. Cool. Let's take a look at what's in this file. I'm going to use the element selection tool and select everything. And it shows me that it has a terrain. So it took that DTM entity that was a civil terrain and it made a MicroStation terrain out of it, which is pretty cool. There is nothing referenced into this file. All of these graphics are contained in this file. If I open up my reference dialog, it's empty. There's nothing up my sleeve. Now, I want to show you some cool stuff about the terrain. But as with the other file, with the 2D graphics, this has got the 3D graphics, and you can copy them, you can manipulate them. But if we select these graphics here, so here's a complex chain. I'm just going to actually snap around. It is at 0 elevation, so I got, for a lot of these graphics, they're at 0 elevation, but the terrain actually has elevations on it. I'm just not displaying the information from the terrain yet, but all of these graphics are copyable just like they were in the other file. You can copy them, you can trim them, make them your own, delete them. They're yours. Let's look at the terrain a little bit more. I'm going to use the element selection tool and select the cyan blue line that is the boundary of the terrain. And I'm going to look at this properties dialog. I'm just going to rip it off here so that I can put it more into the view. The terrain has two different kinds of features. It's got calculated features and it's got source features. I'm just going to select the terrain, it's the outermost undented element type. And there are all these groups down here. We're used to seeing level, color, line style, weight, but there are other groups that come with the element type of a terrain. There's an edge method for how do you do triangulation. There's calculated features and whether or not they are turned on or off. And right now, all of the calculated features are turned off. All of the source features are turned off, except for the boundary. I can turn on the display of the break lines and I don't see anything because I don't believe the source features actually ended up coming over. Oh, nope, it just took too long to display. There we go. I see all of these fine solid lines. Those are the break lines. So that makes sense to me actually now. We get all of our source features, but normally I don't need to display the source features. What I created this file for is so I could display the contours. So I'm going to turn major contours on just in the properties dialog. And now I see these major contour lines. I'm going to turn the minor contours on. And now I see a whole bunch of contour lines. Well, how are those controlled? Well, those are calculated features. So in the upper dialog area of the properties dialog, I'm going to select calculated features. And notice, here's my calculated features display, major contours on. So I have just the information about the major contours, but there's a triangle and I can expand that upper area. And I can see that there's a contours grouping underneath calculated features. When I select contours, ooh, I get more information here. It says major interval is currently set to 5. There's a contour label prefix, whether it's on or off. Oh, precision, that's the label precision, so 1 decimal place. All of this stuff is manipulatable, if that's a word. I'm going to change the major interval from 5. Oh, I love that I can't select that. I'm going to change it to 10 and hit enter. You don't see a whole lot of difference. Let me change the minor interval from 1 to 5. And then we see a lot of space opening up. You go, oh yeah, that looks better. That looks better. Well, what about, I see I've got label precision. How do I turn those labels on? Well, it's actually, let me go up to the calculated features. If I select calculated features in the upper window, nope, it's not there. Let's go to the terrain. Oh, I love it. I found it earlier, so I'll find it. I'll find it. There we go. In the upper window, if we expand the contours and select the actual contour line itself, the major contours, I can set a text style to use, and I can set whether or not the text is displayed. Right now, it's set to no. I'm going to change this text style from O.description small to O.contours. I like O.contours. And I'm going to change the display text from no to yes. And bada boom, I see these displayed. This is a view. This is not a annotation. This is just a label display. It's not an annotation, but it does print. And I can control how often it displays. If I think 100 feet is too frequent, it's driving me nuts, I can change that text interval to 200, hit enter. And so I have a little less frequency of the contour elevation being displayed. That's kind of cool. I'm going to go back to the contours parent group, and I'm going to change the contour label precision to 0. And now it no longer shows me the dot 0. This stuff will all print, and that's an easy way to print things. Just wanted you to see how to create your own contour. There are some other tools that are available to you since you now have a MicroStation element called a terrain. There is, I'm going to go to the Annotate ribbon and choose Annotate. There is a terrain model group for annotation tools related to, the terrain element. You can label the terrain contours. You can do terrain spots, doesn't have to be a contour. So you can choose these. I just wanted to show you a couple things about the labeled terrain contours. You should investigate these on your own. I think we have a current bug defect in the dimension style. So what I would do if I wanted to label all of the contours, maybe I wanted to just draw a line and do my own labels. Let me show you how to use that. Let me turn off the major contour display of the text. I'm going to turn it off. That's just a display thing. And let's use the labeling tool. I'm going to go ahead and let it do upslope. I can do all contours, or I could do just major contours. It's kind of up to me. Let me choose major contours. I am going to choose a dimension style because it's here that I need to set the text style. I'm not going to bother to set a dimension style because there's a defect, but I'm going to go to the text tab for a style set to none and set the text style to O.contours. I'm also going to alter the location and tell it I want it to be inline. O.contours, inline. That's all I need to do. I need to follow the prompts. In the lower left corner, it says identify the terrain model. The terrain model is its boundary. That's what it's looking for. So then it says select from point. Let's say I want to put my annotations in a line sort of mid-screen. I'm going to select to the left of those contours, and then I'm going to select to the right of those contours, and we can see if I zoom in how it is giving me a preview of where it's going to put the contour label. So then I left click and I'm going to right click to reset. Right click a couple of times and it gets me kind of out of the command. Now, are those contours now in the level manager to turn on or no, we don't use the level manager for that. We use the level display dialog. And let's see. I'm not sure. Let's double check. I like to use the element information tool and let's select this text. It's dimension text. It happens to be on the active level. So when I annotated these things, it used all of my active attributes. So it used the active level of default. They're also dimension text. That's not just regular text. So I could turn off default. I could have changed that to a different level before I annotated, and it would be on those levels. Okay. So yes, I can toggle them off. Let's see if I find my used. There's default. It's my active level. Make another level active. Toggle off default. They go away. Now, the reason I chose the O.contours text is because it's got background masking going on. So it's not actually clipping that line. So yeah, when we turn off the level, it just it reveals the line underneath, which is awesome. Yes, this is recorded and I will post this on YouTube, but it'll probably take me about a week. All right, so those are some contours. We can also label spots. Remember, that's on the annotate ribbon in the terrain model group. There are spots. So let me look at this. This dialog box is slightly different. And again, it has a dimension style, which I'm not going to touch. It has a text style. I'm going to choose a text style. I'm going to choose O.contours. And then you just need to follow your prompts. In the lower left corner, it says identify the terrain model. So we're going to identify it by left clicking on the boundary. I'm just going to choose that boundary. Then it says select the spot. Okay, I'm going to select the spot that is, find something that's not near something else. Let me say it's this, well, actually, it's kind of interesting. You can see it's aware of the terrain elevation, and as I move my mouse, that number is changing. So I can just left click and say, that's the spot. Now it wants me to accept or reject. If I accept, it's going to draw a leader. So I'm going to accept with a left click, and it drew the leader. Now when I right click to reset, it placed the leader, and I can see that that dimension style is having trouble drawing that arrowhead. So maybe I should choose a dimension style. And you can pick a dimension style. I would probably, you know, you can play with it yourself. There are some issues with this annotation around dimension styles. So we'll try to get that cleared up. If it's a defect in the product, we won't get any love until we upgrade. So I'm not actually going to worry about that. I know that you can toggle off the arrowhead in the dimension style, and that's probably what I would tend to do, is just tend to toggle off that arrowhead. Terminators right here, it says it's an open arrowhead. I would probably toggle it off someplace. You can ask later, or maybe if Mindy's on, she'll tell me where that's at. I'm not adept with dimension styles. Okay, what else did I want to show you? Oh, I wanted to show you, this is a working file. Maybe I have turned this into a base file and I want to use it as a contour base. Okay, let's create that contour base file. I'm going to exit the product. We're going to check this working file in. Check in. And then in ProjectWise, base files, non-civil graphics get stored in the number 3 base files folder. A fast way to do this and to retain this working file, the one we were just in, is this one that has the default name. So it's not named very well. Let's run the naming tool and correct its name. This is geotechnical. It is going to be a geotechnical design, data design working. That's what I'm going to call this one. Doesn't seem to be doing what I want it to do. So I'm going to choose a different classification. And then I'm going to go back to the geotechnical, just trying to shake things up because I've been in and presenting for quite a while, and the document naming tool is probably a little stale for me. I'm going to try again the geotechnical data design working, and I'm going to click. Yeah. Interesting. Well, it's not working. So I'll try this one more time. Any other questions while I try this again? I'll open ProjectWise. And we'll have a record of me fighting with ProjectWise. Okay, I'm going to go back into pwo.prod. It should take me right back to the geotechnical folder. No, it didn't. It took me to number 2 plan sheets. Geotechnical. Let's try this again. I'm going to try to rename this file using attributes, geotechnical. And I'm going to choose geotechnical data design working, click in the document name field, and all right, let me choose a different one. Let me try a design base. Okay, design base is working. Interesting. Let's go ahead and just save that. Now, so I've got a design base. It's in the wrong place. I can use that move to command. Oh, and I chose retaining wall design base. So I really did not do a very good job of selecting that. That's kind of strange. Oh, I did choose. Silly me. Let's see if we can get the design data working to work. Now design data working is working. I'm liking this. I'm going to type the .dgn and I'm going to click save. I'm not frustrated at all. And then close. All right, this is actually what I wanted it to do. Now I have my design working. It is the second one. So this is my contours. So what I might want to do here is just say that this is my contours in the description. Now, I want to create a base file. I have a working file. The way to create a base file of non-civil graphics, remember this is just MicroStation, is to use this copy to tool. That's what I'm going to use. And I can use the advanced wizard and I can copy it to the, I have to find my folder. I'm in key number 5/8 and I'm going to copy it to the number 3 base files folder. And I'm going to name it geotechnical. We're going to fight with this again. Just a little slow. And this is going to be a geotechnical design, data design base. And when I click in the document name, hold my breath, it tells me the correct folder is number 3 base files. Yay. I give it the .dgn in the document name and hit next. Now, I didn't bother to use move to. I could have, but it would have had the same result. It would leave behind this working file because we don't have the rights to delete from this folder. But if I go to the number 3 base files, it has created the geotechnical data design base, and now I or other people can use this as a base file that shows the contours. If you, I would have named it as a contour file, but geotechnical doesn't have one of those, so I'm just going to put the word contours in the description just to indicate that that's my contours. Yeah. So I'm looking at my notes. If I no longer need my file in geotechnical, if that was my whole goal, I can come back to these files if I no longer need them, and I can z-delete them. I'm going to z-delete that original one. I'm going to change its name, and you go to the beginning and you type the word z-delete and an underscore, and then I'm going to change the state to z-deleted. Now, for most people, that will make it vanish. I happen to be able to see deleted documents, but for most people, that would make that file vanish. Any questions or comments?
Are you using that base file for drafting as well, or is there a different turn on, turn off in your OPNP file for drafting?
That's an excellent question. I don't know what people are using for. Are you talking about for contract plans?
Yes. So if we wanted to display contours in a sheet file, usually you would turn it on and off in your OPNP file versus creating its own base file to attach to the OPNP.
Right. You would need to remember that your OPNP file will, however you set up the default model, that is what will display in all the sheets. So if you change the display of what's in the default model, you could affect other sheets. So you would want a separate OPNP file for that task. And yes, you could display that. But typically when you're editing an OPNP file, you're using OpenRoads Designer, not MicroStation, OpenRoads Designer. So this whole thing today was about creating a base file that could be edited, modified using MicroStation only. I hope that, yeah. Other questions or comments?
Is there still the option to color code the, I guess, holes in the ETM?
Color-coded elevations was a function of a product called InRoads, which is, again, a design, not a drafting product. And so today's stuff was all about the drafting. So
General question then, is it still an option?
I believe, well, it's still an option in Power InRoads, sure.
Yeah.
OpenRoads has, I believe it uses display styles. That you can set a display style for color coded. That's probably the fastest way to do it. And that will work with both MicroStation and with OpenRoads. There's a color associated with the elevation and it's a display style. Anybody else with some easy questions? Thanks for coming today.